Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our first live of the fall. Welcome, Stepping Toward Justice with me, Sarah A. Ford, and two of my best pals, Amy Zmroczek. Hey, Amy. Give us the wave. And my buddy, my friend, my producer, the one who makes all of the technology with anything happen, Zeke Stevenson. Hey, Zeke.
Hello.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
So
I just sent y'all a text of who I was yelling at, by the way.
Who you were yelling at?
He was literally in the plant.
Well,
yes, the puppy that I'm fostering was literally in the plant.
Oh,
now he's just sitting beside it like, what?
Like, I can be there. And there she is, as if on cue. We were just talking about the sweet baby in the plant and the lovely, the amazing Amy Lawrence Lovely. How are you?
My life is chaotic. My husband's out of town. Put the dog and so I'm at home. And so I put the dog and the kids in a room and I locked them in and I'm like, nobody makes a damn word. Nobody barks. The dog's already out, like at the door. Busy is our dog's name, which that says it all, right? How are y'all? It's so good to see your little faces.
It's so good to see you. It's great to like be doing
Thank
this.
you for picking up that stuff.
Oh yeah. It's the teamwork that makes the dream work.
That's so true. I gotta tell you, Amy Lawrence Lovely sent me a text a couple of weeks ago and said, "Send me your address," and I was like, "Okay, yeah." And so I was having the worst day like a week or two ago, and I got this beautiful little box, and on the outside it had a little note. It said, "Love you." And inside, it was this amazing. I hope you guys can see this, but Amy Lawrence Lovely is also an Enneagram 8, like me, and this speaks to our souls. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly. Hashtag Enneagram 8. And it just made, like, let me just tell you, it made my freaking day. And I was like, God, you're the best. Thank you.
Sarah just knew this about me, but Sarah, I'm like that's my love language, giving gifts. So when I see things, this is my favorite thing. Like, I don't know if about this about Amy Z, but she is a lover of pencils.
I did not know that.
He writes in a pencil. So when I find fun pencils that say like "you're a bad bitch" or
right.
I found these like cute little things with little dogs on it. I'm always picking up little things. It's my love language.
Well, thank you. You're so sweet. That totally made my day. I really appreciate it. And it's been a minute since we've all chatted. I mean, things have been super quiet on the South Carolina legal front, right? Or not?
So quiet.
Like what the heck, y'all? I was thinking today, I was like, if you would have like said this was like a 1988 CBS Sunday night movie of the week, like drama sent, like you can't write this, you can't make this stuff up. So obviously, like, let's just jump right into. We're back talking about Alex Murdaugh.
You know, when we heard that there was going to be this motion filed and a press conference, I mean, weren't we all rolling our eyes on the inside?
Of course, obviously.
Okay, right. We're waiting for this big thing, and we're like, we in our hearts and in our heads, we thought it was going to fall flat. It was going to be something silly. They were like grasping at straws, but then we get this like bomb,
pretty big straw,
right? And it, you know, as someone who thinks that Alex Murdaugh killed his family, if what they're saying is true, he needs a new trial.
Pretty big straw.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Oh, that's okay.
Technology. I'm not used to this, you guys. It's been like a couple months. Sorry. Well, it was like a big like dun dun dun. We're gonna get together and we're gonna talk about all this stuff. It was not what I thought it was gonna be, for sure. Like saying that the clerk, like all of this misconduct, that was not on my dance card at all. I mean,
still kind of. I mean, very little leaves us speechless, y'all. And that one, but I think this, I think this kind of happens more often than we can imagine. Little things like this, or big things like this.
Oh, I think it happens a lot more often than we imagine, but on the scale like that on which it happened was, I mean, there'll be times, and I'll tell you this because I pick a lot of juries, and I have, and a part of me, the just part of me wants to always say that, that it's can be harmless and that they don't have the training, because I'll tell you that in a county that I live in, my office is in, and that I pick a lot of juries in, I lose my mind during jury selections, and I finally had to say something about it because I don't know if you've ever been a part of jury selection, but they randomly pick 300 people to come in qualify. Well, really, they don't even check off the convicted felons and things like that. So it's just 300 people that are have a license and or registered to vote in this county, and so they all come into Richland County where my office is, and so one of the beauties about the courthouse, sarcasm noted, is that they turn the air off at 5:00 on Fridays. The first time I learned this, because I had a jury go until 11 p.m. on a Friday with no air.
What amount?
But so you get 300. Yeah, we get 300 people that don't know what they're doing. They come in and they sit in this room. And well, they've changed it now, because it used to be like we had no jury room. Like in Orange County, they have that really nice jury room downstairs. We never had that. We do now, but we didn't have it before in Richland. So they would just all pile in. And so, you have to be careful about, just any random comment that you say. But then the clerk, she's retired now, but she would come in and she would greet everyone and just say, thank you for coming in. Your role is important, because a lot of times, people just plead once they know you're going to show up. And I'm like, stop, don't, and I would let it go. And then finally I was just like, called court administration. I was like, I don't know who to talk to about this, but she's not meaning it in any sort of way, like at all. She has no books to sell. She has nothing. But just that comment alone, she doesn't understand how it can just, the
impact of it, the waves will be felt forever. Yeah.
Exactly. And the innocent until proven guilty thing is a real thing. And people,
it's supposed to be anyway.
But people don't really understand that. I mean, they just don't understand. They're, they see your name on the newspaper, arrest warrant, indictment. It's the other way around. It just, I don't care what the judge tells you. It's just instinctive. That's what it means. And then for her to come in and say, look, they know they're guilty, but they didn't think that they could pick 12 to put in the box. But if we do that, and that's what, and I was just like,
it forces people to plead guilty. And you're like, yeah.
Right. And that was just a little comment. I mean, I can't imagine,
Well, it's like about that county. I want to tell you this real quick. I was told by a very, very, very fancy, reliable person that, and I've said this before, that in that county, that you can listen into the jury room through another office and through an air conditioned vent.
That is not the only county I've heard.
Yeah. Now, the only time that's ever happened in Ori is they were duking it out in there and screaming and yelling that we could hear them down the hallway and through 2 doors. So that's rare. It's because it was a civil case, which is even better, right? And there was one holdout that didn't want to give any money, and all of them wanted to give, so they split the baby and went in the middle. But that's just crazy to me that everybody's like, got a glass.
That happens a lot more.
Yeah.
I've been in at least 3 counties where that happens.
I think that, one of the things, so I practice primarily in a county that I grew up in. So there is rarely a time that anybody is in that jury pool that I don't know, doesn't know my mama, doesn't know my daddy, knows my brother, like, oh, I went to church, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I, obviously, as a former prosecutor, as a former public defender, as a victim's rights lawyer, like always super careful to avoid contact with anyone. Like, don't look up, like walk into that courtroom, whatever. And so many people, think, after the fact, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, well, I saw you last week, but you wouldn't even look at me or wouldn't even speak to me. And I'm like, well, there's a reason why. I'm trying, like, I don't want to have any improper communication, I said to someone the other day, like, it's not just impropriety, yeah, bad, but just the appearance of impropriety is bad, especially the optics of that. And so that is something that I've always been so conscious of. And as lawyers, of course, we have to be conscious of that, or we should be very conscious, or officers of the court or people who work in the courthouse, that it's not, that we have to make sure that we are not influencing, tainting, even by saying that something is, hey, Mrs. Jones, good to see you this morning. You looked really nice in church. Like, not saying anything that could be construed in any way other than 1,000% on the up and up. So I think a lot of times people forget the power of just that just that, hey girl, like, you don't want a hey girl in jury when you're around a jury. Like, you just don't do that.
You know what I think the Murdaugh case has taught me and has really opened my eyes and really been disappointing is that, like, I really love being a lawyer. I talk about that all the time. I'd like get up jazzed to be a lawyer every day and help people. It makes my heart just happy. Amy, you're one of those people. Sierra, you understand that. We get up really excited to do what we do and are really proud of it. And matter of fact, it makes me get all teary-eyed thinking about it. It's like so disappointing that we have seen all this improper stuff. And really, there's not really been any accountability on any of it, with the exception of him. Like, we're not seeing, when we go to
SLED agent got agent of the year when he lied to the grand jury. And
we go to lawyer school, right? That's what I always called it, because it didn't seem as like meh when you said law school. We call it lawyer school. I went to lawyer school, and during this 3-year process, they talk about integrity and ethics and how it's so important, and not even a look of impropriety, all this stuff. And then the Murdaugh case comes, and everything's kind of folded out. We're hearing of misconduct by judges, by attorneys, by law firms, by all of them, on all this grand scale of like craziness. And then there's not really been any accountability, and nobody seems to think it's a big deal. And I'm over here worried about, like, down to a penny in a trust account. And I pay, I write a check every year in January to an ethics attorney so I can call, like, on a whim on her cell phone and be able to get an answer, because I'm so worried about doing the right thing by everybody, and especially by the code of ethics that we have. Matter of fact, she laughs at me. She's like, Amy, you already know the answer. And I'm like, but I just need that.
But I need you to tell me that.
Like, you tell me that it's okay. And she's like, no, you're moral and ethical. Right on the card, baby. Don't worry about it. We're good. But I'm over worried about everything. And here are these people who are still millions of dollars. People on the bench that are signing orders with no names and not like the craziest things we've ever heard of. And there's no accountability. And I think that's probably the part that's been like so disappointing for me, because anything that we want to bring I don't like lawyer jokes, and this just puts us right back into the line lawyers, and I just don't like it.
I'm curious, as a non-lawyer of the group, y'all spent a lot of time in school, lawyer school, and I read on Greenville Times this morning that the clerk was a first-term clerk. So, maybe there was some, newness to the job that she may have slipped up and made a mistake. What training do clerks and people in the courthouse get? And is it adequate? And should this clerk have known better as a first-term clerk?
I think as a human being, she knew better. I don't think you had to have any training to know that she should have not been saying any of those things.
And let's just say, like, these are allegations that have come up.
If what they're saying is true, there's no doubt in my mind, as just a living, breathing human being who's been alive more than 20 years, she knew better. There is something called just like a universal truth, and that just seems to be one of them. I don't think you need a lot of training. I think they do go to kind of like judges, municipal and magistrate judges go to judge school. I think that they do have go to
But
some
it's-
kind of clerk training.
And they have like a clerk like association,
So-
I think, that they do their trainings with and that sort of thing. How much?
Well, so according to the judicial website, an order was issued by Gene Toll back in May 21 of 2014 that said, pursuant to provisions of South Carolina Constitution, Article 5, Section 4, the attached revised clerk of court manual is approved by all county clerks and their blah, 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 this manual. So really, I know that they do like a 2 or 3 day training like the magistrates do, and I use training in air quotes because the lawyers are the ones who do a lot of that training. And I'm not saying that we're not trained, but I'm not trained to train a clerk of court on all of her duties. I can tell her, don't talk about the cases that are, pending. But so it's very to answer your
Law and Order has
kind
been
of
on TV for like 25 years. We all know better.
Exactly. I mean, it's a very loose and independent training, but still, I read a comment or something somewhere that said that, guilty verdict is what's needed to get a book published or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, well, no, it's not. I mean, look at all the OJ books that are out there.
Yeah, but it does tell better. For her, it probably feels like a better story. And I would really like to know what her background is in that community, and if he stole any money from any of her family. Because Lord, you could throw a rock in that county, and you could find a victim of Alex Murdaugh. So I have a feeling there's some implicit bias.
And why? I mean,
I do too.
Like I understand there's some. Probably, I'm sure everyone's looking for an opportunity to benefit from the story.
Spotlight.
Is it? How uncommon is it that someone in her position would also write a book on, and they can spin it all they want to, that, it's a memoir type situation where she is chronicling history, but there's no way that she wrote a book without there being some sort of bias in the book.
So I'm going to tell you just the Sarah Ford thought on this, and I'm going to maybe irritate some people with what I'm going to say. I think anytime you have a public official, someone who is in an elected position, telling their story or someone else's story while they're in office, it gives me the ick. Okay. Like, I'm a country girl. To me, it doesn't pass the smell test. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it was unethical. Doesn't mean, there are a gazillion things. I think that she went through like the ethics committee. I think I saw a great letter from, a really great lawyer saying, if all of this, then you're good to go. If not, then maybe not. It just doesn't feel right to me. And I think when we see some of, from like, don't come for me because I really think he's a great judge. But some of the comments that were made by Judge Newman made me feel a little like, and you're going to be like, but bitch, you're on here talking about it like on Twitter. And I'm like, well, I'm a nobody from like 4 counties away. Like, I don't have a dog in this fight at all. Like there's nothing here for me. So it makes me uncomfortable. Not saying it's wrong.
Well, he still has all these pending cases in front of Judge Newman, and that's a problem. You know what I mean? You can't be out saying, I know he did it, and he's a horrible human, or whatever he was saying. Like, you know what I mean? It just doesn't pass. You're right. It's the ick factor. There still has to be some kind of like. I would have immediately moved to have him removed from all of his other cases as a defense attorney. And I love Judge Newman. Thought he did a great job. But like, everybody loves the warmth of the spotlight. Feels kind of good. And I think that's kind of what everybody got the taste of. And the thing is, if she wrote this book after she went out of office, no one would think twice about it. But she was still in office, and that's really they're super ick
And
factor.
we still had cases that are going to be coming up in that county involving
Right.
him potentially. So that's like, I just don't. I think so. One thing I'm going to bitch about later on.
It's so problematic. And what's
Go ahead, Amy. Go ahead. I'll bitch in a second. Go ahead.
what I was going to say is that not only that, but it makes everyone involved look a little questionable. I mean, and even, even the jurors that wrote affidavits, because they were asked every day at the beginning of court, have you had any contact or and even when she left, that probably wasn't recorded, but jurors are asked every day, have they had any inappropriate contact? Have they read anything they weren't supposed to, blah, blah, blah. But not only that, just, the length of time that it took to get this far. And I know that there's the, they won't talk to us kind of things, but it's still at this point, the only way that I can see something happening is that they pull in all 14 or 16 or however many jurors we had for every single day. And they have to ask them these questions on the record, sequestered individually. So somebody's going to have to lie under oath or somebody's not going to lie under oath. It is messy all the way around. And it just...
You can see how he got those affidavits. He got those affidavits by saying, look, I can go and we can go and have a big old... This is exactly... I mean... I'm paraphrasing and I'm just like guessing, but I'm guessing somebody looked at those jurors, somebody from the defense, and they said, after they told the truth, and they said, look, you can either sign these affidavits, right? You can tell me your story, we'll put it to paper, and that'll make it, that's the easy way. Mm-hmm. Or the hard way is, I'm gonna call a hearing, we're gonna put you on the stand, and you're gonna have to recount everything you just told me. And all these witnesses in this room or whatever, what you told my investigator.
Which I think is going to have to happen.
Oh, absolutely. But
and
that's how the affidavits came up. But that's how the affidavits came about. That's exactly what I was told.
But 785, the egg juror, the egg juror, 785, right? We know that she got a lawyer almost immediately after that. So.
And also, did you know, y'all, I love all the, when I say I love all the lawyers, I mean, I like Eric Bland. I respect him. I like Joe McCullough. I'm not going to speak to the defense. I'm not the biggest fan of them in general. But, the attorneys that are involved, Justin Bamberg, wonderful, But when I see all them coming out of the woodwork and representing these jurors after they're representing people on the civil side, that's just another ick factor.
Or the clerk. Or the clerk.
They should have called.
It's all just still
Sarah Ford or Amy Learn Slowly. Amy Z, you're out because you represent dude. But somebody outside that represents, that does victims advocate work or that help, can help and give some insight into this kind of thing, and they would still be protected. But this is the most incestuous thing I've ever seen.
It is incredibly incestuous. I want to go back to some of those affidavits though, because while there are some jarring, alarming allegations that are brought, some of them were really weak sauce to me, gals, and Zeke, some of them I was like, quote, I could see that. You right, quote, I can see that when you got nothing else. I could see that. Well, I could see that, used to be a great 8th grade cheerleader, but doesn't mean it's true. I'm like, whatever. I was like, and I think what I keep, and of course, y'all know, how I got started doing any of this is just ranting, is just seeing all of this crazy, inaccurate crap all over the internet. And I'm like, that's wrong. That's not the way it is. But this is if you were going to come for somebody, you better come for them. Your gun has got to be loaded. And I shouldn't make that connection there, but you better have every affidavit. It better be tight. It better have everything.
That's a big accusation.
Have as many
it better not have birdshot and buckshot shells. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but you better be set up. And it just was kind of I felt like Daria, I was excited in a way, shut up, no way, these are the allegations. And then I went and read all of this stuff, and I was like, volleyball falls to the floor, whatever that was.
Bad.
Some of it's, but
some of it's bad.
Some of
but
it's
only a very small,
kind of unbelievable.
But they kept it to that. Right.
But I think it's because some of it is more damning than others, but collectively it's a fire, right? It's not just smoke, but collectively it's a fire. And I think that's what they were going for. It's not how we would have handled it because, we're amazing.
Well, I keep thinking like, okay, if you have, you can pull the wool over maybe one person's eyes, but like pulling the wool over 12 people's eyes is pretty damn difficult to do. You hope like you're going to have somebody's in there is going to be like strong moral compass. Like, I mean, that's why we have juries of, 12 people. But just reading these affidavits and then the affidavits from the paralegal that works for Dick Harpootlian recounting the story, like recounting the conversation.
That's why he wouldn't sign an affidavit to it, but told her story. And then his story. And then when they said, will you sign this affidavit? They're like, no, we don't want any part
No,
of
I'm not going to do it. Right. And so I was like, well, that's not someone's affidavit. That's the affidavit. That's like, Amy Lawrence and I went out to lunch and, she had this and we talked about this, but that's not Amy's affidavit. That's like Sarah Ford's affidavit about what Amy Lawrence, what she ate for lunch. Like it doesn't mean anything. So I thought that was like super weak sauce. And I thought that the general allegations, like there's been an impropriety with the clerk of court, like OMG. And then like getting into it, I'm just not, are we going to get to the evidence you're hearing? Yeah, I think we've got to, but is it going to go anywhere?
Well, I think the most damning evidence is the egg lady.
What part of the egg lady story? Because part of this story is a little bit like egg on face.
So you tell me if I get this right? Egg lady is bringing her little eggs in for the jury, right? She's sharing her eggs, which you got to give those things away. They're popping them out left and right. So I hear, I don't know. I can't even have my garbage can out in my neighborhood for more than like an hour. And then everybody's falling apart and finding me. So, I mean, I don't know anything about chickens. I wish I did. That would be fun.
No, you don't. I had some in my backyard. I had some in my backyard from my neighbor like 2 weeks ago, like flying into my yard. I live in town. Like, so you don't want chickens. You don't want
chickens are out. I don't know about chickens, but like she's very kind. She's bringing chicken, like little eggs for everybody. Everything's good. And I just find it really suspicious that when she got kicked off the jury, everybody in that courtroom was like, that would have been the one that hung it, because she was like wiping a tear when he was testifying. Those kind when Buster said all these things. She's being very empathetic to the defense. And it was very obvious, right? So this is the one that gets chosen, egg lady, to be gone. So there is this allegation that her ex-husband has posted something in a Facebook group about how he gets drunk with her, right? And they talk about the case. Am I right?
Yeah, I think that's the allegation.
And the clerk of court, this comes to her attention, and she, instead of bringing it to the judge's attention, takes it upon herself to interrogate this juror and talk to the juror about it. And she brings it to the juror, and the juror says, what are you talking about? I haven't seen him in 10 years. I haven't seen my ex-husband in like 10 years. And she's like, oh no, we haven't. She's like, well, let me see it. I don't know what you're talking about. No, let me see it. And she doesn't have it. She doesn't have this Facebook post.
Yeah.
And goes on to question her more. And then it goes to, then they take it to the judge. And Judge Newman questions her. And he's like, this doesn't look good. He doesn't really believe her. And then the clerk of court says, well, here is this apology on the Facebook, because that's disappeared now. I can't screenshot anymore. I thought I did along the lines of that. But here's this apology from the husband. Well, nobody really looks, but the apology is from like about something else, and it's from February, right? And they kick her off the jury.
But I don't think that's the only reason they kicked her off the jury.
Okay, tell me, what's the other stuff?
So I think there were some other allegations that she had been talking with other people in the community just in general about the case. So that's my understanding as well. So it was not just the Facebook egg.
I heard something about the grocery store. Did y'all hear something about the grocery store?
I feel like there's so many like little stories and I'm like, is this all like, am I hearing this? Is this just coming from Twitter? Like, I don't even know. But that was my understanding, that it was multiple things about the egg lady, that it wasn't just the Facebook thing. But you are 1,000% right, because even Judge Newman on the record says, I really don't like that the clerk talked with her about, like, that's a no-no. Like,
Right.
you don't.
She just took it to him immediately and let him handle it. It seems like she was taking a lot of things into her hands that shouldn't have been taken into, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
And I just think it's funny that everybody in that courtroom was like, oh, that, you know, I remember, who's the lady from, my brain's, from Pretty Lies and Alibis?
Gigi.
I love her. Yeah. I love her. She immediately was like, that was going to be the one. Everybody in that room was like, she would have been the one because she was so empathetic and sympathetic to the defense. And like, you know, it was buying the bullshit. Whatever. You know what I mean? I just think it's funny that she's the one that the clerk, all these allegations have come out against the clerk of court. And that happens to be the one that she chooses to interrogate and doesn't have the Facebook post. And then tells the court that there's an apology about the Facebook post, but the Facebook post was from February, it predates the jury. I mean, like, it just don't make any difference.
And there was something about the names, like the ex-husband's name was like Tim Stone, and this was from like a Timothy Stone, and like
that's not his Facebook.
I don't. That's not his Facebook. I mean, y'all, this is some like backwoods, low country drama. Like, it is the most ridiculous thing. I mean,
but you know what else it is? It's
crazy.
Ego. It's ego from Dick and Jim. This is total ego, right? It's the I can't believe I've lost, because I mean, honestly, they went into this trial with the confidence of mediocre white men who've always won, who've always been able to tell a bullshit story and no one questioned it, and they rolled along, and it didn't work this time, and they kind of have egg on their face.
And to interrupt you, and to be egg on their face. That's funny. But also it's pun. But it's also interesting because not only have they been able to like a win is in this situation would have been a hung jury, you know? So that's why she becomes so important, because a win isn't always a win in our world. You know, a win is, you know, a hung jury in you know, I really do think that they, you know, they didn't spend the time that they needed to prepare. This, you know, it's so unusual for a murder case, especially one of this caliber, to go to court so quickly. You know, when I've got way older cases still pending, people still in jail, right? And I think that they, you know, realized that they weren't ready. And so a hung jury would have been an absolute win, because they would have tried it again, but you know, the cards would have been on the table. You know what to expect, you know what to challenge and change, and
you know where to pick,
to bring forward.
I would hope that if they try this case again, that they will do it so much better.
Amy says, and I'm like holding my breath, like,
I mean, I sound like a total asshole in an armchair, you know, expert over here, like playing Monday morning quarterback. But I mean, I thought that when they gave 3 weeks to the financial crimes, and when they started cross-examining these witnesses, every time they had somebody get up there, the only thing that they should have asked was, and do you have any evidence about the murder of Paul and Maggie Murdoch? And when they said no, and say, I didn't think so. Thank you so much for being here. And then, but when they started asking questions about the financial crimes, something he's already admitted in court, they gave it life.
Yeah.
And then when all these guns come into evidence, their only question to their firearms expert would be to pull every mother effing one of them out, lay them all out in front of the expert and say, and Mr. Expert, which one is the murder weapon? And when he says none of them, then say, I didn't think so. I don't know why Mr. Waters here admitted them, because they're not relevant. Thank you so much. And I would have just made a mockery of their prosecution and not given it life. They kept giving it life for stuff that didn't matter. And if you would have taken that kind of like, people would have been like, yeah, this is a sham. This is some bullshit. They don't have any evidence. That would have been like the response.
I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed in Hampton County to find somebody without a gun. You know?
Yeah. Zeke, what are you going to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So y'all are kind of going into a question that I wanted to ask, so I'll ask it after I ask my original question. It feels like the defense, with all of these appeals that they have done since the trial, have just been throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks. When this appeal came out, I wondered if it was the same, but how long do y'all think they've been sitting on this information? And two, the whole Buster thing just came out a week ago. Was all this an orchestrated
Absolutely.
circus?
I mean, don't you think so,
Sideshow.
Amy? Orchestrated?
Well, they're the ones, the defense are the ones who set up the whole Fox documentary. There's no question that there are two very competing documentaries. One's coming out September 20th on Netflix, the part 2 or whatever, and then this Fox documentary, which was erased to get out before the Netflix, which said exactly what they wanted it to say, and blah blah blah. And so, was it orchestrated? Yes, because they, like I've alluded to, I believe that they, at least from the egg juror, that they've had, if they had that knowledge, they had it much earlier than they did at this, than they filed.
What I think probably happened is, one, they said that this kind of came out after the book came out, and I think probably one juror finally told what happened. Right? It was just kind of weird. She did this, she did that, and a lot of times these jurors don't even realize that it was improper. And if they do, they're scared to come forward and say anything about it, because who are they, right? Who are they to say that? Yeah. I mean, they should have probably come forward before. Like, these are all the things that are running through their minds, and they're worried.
And I'm sure it's incredibly intimidating to sit on a jury in a case of this magnitude.
We're lawyers and we're intimidated by the process.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
Maybe not Amy Z. I mean, she walks in like she's 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I'm just like crying in the corner.
Stop, please. She's like swinging that. She's like, rolling.
She's like,
oh, Amy, I will follow Amy into a courtroom any day of the week.
Can I tell y'all something too? When I watched, it took everything in my being to give $5.99 to fucking Fox News.
You didn't know.
You did not, Amy.
I had to watch it. It was like, my husband goes, I can't believe you're doing this. You're really going to do it? You're going to give him $5.99 of your money? Like, you're really going to do it? I'm like, click, click, like on the side of my iPhone. I did it. But I watched it. And I like the Jim Griffin and Dick Harpootlian that was shown in that documentary was so much cooler. It's so much better than what we got in the courtroom. Like, I wish they tried a case like they were talking to that documentary, because I thought they were so much better. Like I remember when I'm going what did he say? He said the F word or something. He's like, there's everybody's got a fucking gun around here. Like, these are the shootingest motherfuckers I've ever seen, is what he said. Something like along those lines. And I was like, yeah, like that's what you should have conveyed. You know what I mean? Everybody has guns in this county, and these people happen to have more than anybody, because they're the huntingest, fishingest, shootingest people I've ever met. And I come from a big hunting family, so that's saying something.
So we had some questions. Some people DM'd me some questions. And if anybody's watching right now, you can totally please add in your questions here, because when we get together with the Amy's, it's just like,
oh, sorry, we're like cats.
Rapid fire.
And neither one of us take our medication. Because I know Zeke has another question too, but we.
Well, and I'm just like, I'm getting hopped up on Mountain Dew,
Well, I want us to
ask your questions. Type them in, everybody. Sorry.
Well, I'm curious. Well, thank you, Siri. I'm curious. Like, what does a retrial, a new trial look like? I mean,
It like a brand new trial.
Everything's already been.
Amy Z is the queen of a retrial.
I'll tell you this. I love her good retrial. And I'll tell you this, that it's so much, if it's done correctly, it's so much better. The problem that I have seen historically in my personal experience with this. Here's the problem that I've seen. So, you know, they had 2 court reporters. So there's a full transcript of everything that happens, blah, 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 blah. That's like the Bible when you are in a retrial, right? Because you've got all these answers, questions under oath, blah, blah, blah. So, and especially like when the state gets a retrial and they're like, well, we already won once. And they literally use that as their play by play.
They will go and like almost
Terrible
read it.
idea.
It's creepy. Yeah.
True.
Like you could, yes. And that's I think that that's to their detriment. I had the first retrial I ever had was a guy who, before I was even a lawyer, was put on death row. And his case went through the appeal process, denied. It went through the PCR process, finally overturned, as it should have been. So then they have a retrial, and we're talking, I think the retrial ended up being 13 or 14 years after the original trial. So I had all, and I wasn't even part of the first trial. And since it was a PCR, meaning that post-conviction relief, that they found the other attorneys ineffective, so they had to get new attorneys. So I was appointed on this death penalty case, and I was super nervous because, you know, they actually brought it back not as a death penalty this time, so it was just a straight up murder, which, you know, it's still life times 2. But then when we got into the trial, and they are literally to the opening and closing, and when he did the same opening that he did in the retrial, I was like, I mean, I was elated because I was able to, you know, really prepare for my objections better, really prepare for the testimony of the state's witnesses better. But most importantly, in the closing, I was able to take their closing and twist it and use it, you know, against them. And that's something that,
Maybe in that retrial we did.
And I read somebody said,
she used the same,
right,
20
or
years later, used the same damn opening as the guy who he's already been. I mean, the prosecutors died 20 years ago, and she was like literally going verbatim from his. Like, they get lazy.
Yep,
and that's what you hope for, right?
And you know, I read on one of the comments that somebody said, like they said, I hope it's streamlined. That's the one good thing, is it should be streamlined at this point, you know, for the next time around. But it's still going to take a good 3 weeks, you know.
At least. Jenny Jams, hey.
At least.
She is one of our is it Twitter? Is it X? What am I supposed to call this? I don't even know. I feel like I'm 84. Like,
Twitter for life, 2 spaces after a Senate. I mean, after a period, like
whatever.
Just call it Twitter.
Whatever. The thing that we all are on. Thoughts on the likelihood of a new trial being granted? I love this question because I think we're going to have some disagreement here, and I love a good little disagreement. Amy Lawrence Lovely, what do you think?
I think if those jurors get up and say that she was saying these kind of things, I think we'll get it. I think they have to, and to keep the integrity of the system. And if they get up there and backpedal and blah, 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 then no, you know, it's going to depend on what those jurors get up there and say under oath.
Yeah. Amy Z?
I unfortunately agree with, not unfortunately, just because I don't love to agree with her. I love to agree with her. But also I think that just, you know, optics, you know, if like she says, even one of those jurors gets up there and says X, Y, and Z, she said this to me, I think it'll be stronger if they have both of the jurors that did affidavit say that she said something. You know, I just don't see how they can get around it, because I think somewhere somebody will overturn it. Because remember, the end of you know, South Carolina Supreme Court is not the end all be all of these determinations, you know, and it could go all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And I think even with the most conservative Supreme Court that I've seen in the United States, I think that if they look at this, and I'm talking like these legal, like John Roberts, who we don't see eye to eye on issues. I like women, but but I just think that any scholar can look at this and say it just looks too bad on a case that's too big.
If they'll do this to the richest guy, right? The most powerful dude in the county, then what are they doing to the guy when nobody's watching? And that's really what we have to.
I think that's a great point. Now, I think that for me, it's not just that someone said something, but it's that someone was unduly influenced by that. That's what the standard is. And a lot of people are like, well, of course it's going to be overturned because I feel that. Well, nobody gives a crap what you feel. There has to be a legal standard. And the legal standard is that the person was influenced by that, not that it was just out there. It's not like, you've got somebody's waving the banner. And, it's like, if I didn't see the banner and you're still waving it, like I wasn't influenced by that. But if these people come up and say, which I think if they were going to say it, they should have said it in their affidavits. I didn't see it like that. But hey, I mean, I think we're definitely, in my opinion, going to see an evidentiary hearing. I think we've got to. From what I'm seeing, I'm not so sure if there's going to be a new trial. Because I don't know that we've met that standard that they were actually.
When she said you got to come back with a quick verdict, and then they came back with a quick verdict. I mean, that's pretty spot on.
Well, I mean,
she got a juror kicked off based off of no evidence.
Here's the thing. I have a very healthy suspicion for a lot of things that are written in affidavits, particularly when they are written in the way that these affidavits were written. Let's be real. Like I've seen a lot of stuff. I can say that the sky is green outside and someone can say, well, the sky is colorful. Like that doesn't mean I didn't say, like we can make things look like the way we want them. We can spin things. I am not saying that Becky Hill, I thought she absolutely said these things. If she did, absolutely, we need to retry it. I think we definitely need to look more into this. I need more than one juror and an egg juror and, the paralegals affidavits to get to that point, though. I don't have enough in my opinion.
What they get up and test.
I don't see enough here. But.
Well, and I'll tell you this, Sarah, I'll tell you to your point. So the press conference that they had, so how you have a healthy skepticism of affidavits as everybody should, because people, it's under oath, but it's I've yet to see somebody get a perjury threat from an affidavit versus getting up on the stand. But the thing that really has stayed in the back of my mind, and I've learned in the last 51 years to not ignore the things that are in the back of my mind, is something that Jim kept saying over and over again. And I actually saw him in federal court, him and Dick are at this point tied to the hip, because we had federal court the next day and they both walked in together and they were representing the same person. And I was like, have y'all just heard? No, y'all just do everything together. Y'all go to the bathroom together. He said it to my face. Well, I don't even want to think about it. But he's telling me this to my face. He said it on the press conference numerous times. But when he said it to my face, it really made me. He said, if what's in these affidavits is true, he said it in the press conference numerous times, like the way that he said, if what he said, if these affidavits are true and we believe they are. And I'm like, what? You wrote the affidavit. You wrote the affidavit, so you know that they're true. And so to your vagueness kind of issue with those affidavits, that's why I think that affidavit, I think that we have to have a full-on under oath, it's going to be on camera, evidentiary hearing. And I think that you're going to see something. There's a reason why witnesses get in front of jurors and get on the stand and testify to jurors, because it's the credibility doesn't just come from your words. It comes from your demeanor. It comes from facial expressions. It comes from tone. It comes from belief. And if the egg juror, they can only craft her words so much. And I don't mean to pick on the egg juror. If any juror gets up there and is asked point blank by the judge or the prosecution or whoever asks the questions, what are the words that Becky said to you? That, what did she say to you about guilt? And if they fumble, stutter, can't remember, and especially if it's done in sequestration as it should be, then there also should be different descriptions of what she said. And I think at that point we'll have a better idea, as opposed to just, I could, anybody can put anything in affidavit. Sure, it's under oath and notarized, but it does not have the full effect of a hearing. But I think that I'm a little concerned. Well, I guess they had 10 days to respond and blah, blah, blah. But I hope it's done sooner rather than later. I mean, here's the other thing. Newman is set to retire in December 31st at 5 p.m. I mean, if anybody were counting, I'm just telling you, that's when his retirement date is. And it doesn't look like he's signed up for, active retirement. Yeah, that's why I always get in trouble on this.
I don't know what they're saying.
But
she's like, everybody got every damn minute. She's like, we have exactly 34 days, 20 minutes, 20 hours, 17 seconds.
I mean, we need a countdown.
There may be a countdown somewhere. I mean, there may be one. I don't know, but but it's pretty accurate. But I mean, but that's also an issue because he, was assigned as the state grand jury judge for this case
to handle all of these cases.
So
that's why when he came out and made all these statements afterwards, it just didn't.
It was like,
and when I was listening to that press conference by Dick and Jim, which sounds like a 1950s.
We need to give that a new name. Yeah,
Dick and Jim had their shoes. I just kept. The first thing, because we were on SDS, and I was like, I was texting Amy and Aaron and Taylor Bell, and I was like, are they trying to get Judge Newman disqualified? And we were like, that's exactly what they're doing. Like the way they were crafting their words. Well, I mean, he's become a witness in this case, and I don't know, like the whole thing just seems crazy. I can't wait. I want to hear what these jurors are going to say. I want to see how they're going to say it. I want to see, like their mannerisms are, because I thought the most powerful witnesses in that entire case were like the, what was her name? The little black lady that, the little black lady that took care of his mom.
Oh, you mean Shelley?
Miss Shelley. Yeah. Miss Shelley.
Shelley.
Like one of my favorites, but like the way you could tell she was so torn in her testimony because she really loved him. Like she loved Mr. Alex. He'd always been so good to her, but she knew what he did and said to her was so wrong. She had to tell somebody, but to get up there and say it, it just read all over her face that her little lip was whoever, you know what I mean? Like that is what was so powerful. It wasn't even really what she said. It was how she said it is what made it so powerful, because you could see that she was so torn. Because how could somebody you love, as much as you do and known for all these years could do this horrible thing? And that you got to tell somebody about it. You know what I mean? That they could have, and they've asked you to do something that isn't right either. So I think how they say it, their mannerisms, and what they say is going to be really, really important.
Credibility comes. It's not just, you're right. It's not just the word. It's a whole package that you have to evaluate for sure. I know Zeke is trying to get in some of the questions that people have asked. Right. So one question that I have here, we will get to Mont in just 1 second. One I promised that we would talk about is the allegations about SLED investigating this versus the feds. What are our thoughts on this? What are our thoughts on this, ladies? Because I have a few thoughts on this. SLED
should be not touching it for like with a 10-foot pole. They couldn't even do this case right, much less. I mean, why don't they go test some rape kits? That's what they need to do.
Well, I do wish they would test some rape kits.
I know. They need to take their resources and go somewhere else and let the feds handle it. That's
but under what precedence?
I don't know. They suck.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I say that because in this case, like when we the blood spatter test. You know what I mean? They were willing to do whatever it took to get a win. And if that meant manufacturing,
here's what I think
that
they
was
should
okay. What?
So I don't know if this is FBI-ish. I mean, I know that they're trying to bring the FBI into it. I don't know that that's necessarily.
I think what they were thinking is like, it can't be SLED. So who has the capabilities to do this?
Who else?
We definitely don't want
if they were thinking that.
Right. We don't want Horry County Police doing it, right?
If they were thinking that, then that's exactly what. Well, and that's exactly what they should have been thinking. For example, the Florence, I can't talk too much about it, but I can talk a little bit in general. The Florence shooter, right? Fred Hopkins, who is accused of killing 2 and injuring 5 other Florence County deputies or town of Florence deputies, depending on where they worked. Okay. But what they did is Florence County didn't investigate that. Lexington or Richland County did. Right. And so you can, much like prosecutors' offices can contact a different circuit or the AG's office, right? So can investigators. They could have, not Ori, somebody who doesn't have a lot of time on their hands. Buford, I don't how much, I don't know how much crime they're doing down in Buford, or Clarendon, but
no, who should they get to investigate that who investigated Stephen Smith because he was on top of it.
Yeah.
Lord.
Right.
Lord.
But you can bring in another agency.
True. I just don't think so. I mean, I think it calls for like the Fed to come in on like
sexier, y'all. Like bring in the FBI. Doesn't that sound better? Doesn't that sound like cooler and sexier?
Like we'll get like basically there's like an FBI show on like every single night. I'm like, why? What are all these shows? Like I don't like FBI, like Miami. I don't even know. I'm making that up, but like I don't get it. I just don't think there's any precedence for that.
When I was a very baby lawyer, I'd been I'd had my bar license all of like 30 days and my boss sent me to a prelim because whatever. And I remember the judge was like, he saw what I was saying and I wasn't picking up on it. He's like, we have it? And I was like, no, motion to dismiss. And I feel like this was Dick Harpoon going, call the FBI, right? Call the FBI. That sounds so much cooler than Lexington.
Well, especially when, they're all wearing those sunglasses, like they're the, It
reminded me of Kim Kardashian. Those little tiny glasses.
That was not what I thought, but that was very generous, Amy. That was very generous. Zeke, what was the question that we had? Apologies for delaying that. What effect do y'all think this will have on jurors in the future? I'm sure relieved I wasn't on that jury, especially for the jurors who chose to remain anonymous and not speak out. Definitely co-sign your thoughts here. Look at Amy Z looking fabulous in her shades. I mean, what effect are we going to see from okay, well, I can't, y'all, I'm 41. I have to get my reading glasses out. Like I can't see that. So, I mean, I think this is going to be very problematic for jurors because if I'm a juror, if I'm one of the 100 that comes into any county to come and say, okay, well, I'm a potential juror, I'm going to be like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
I've seen everything. I think he did it, and I have a felony on my record. They're like, right? Like, but I can't be this jury.
I have 12 kids at home. My grandma bumped her knee. I have
all under the age of 6.
Like, you're gonna say anything to get out of it.
Well, my thing is how do you find a fair and impartial jury in this state, much less the country? But really, the state. I mean, I was at a meeting. In New York and with a bunch of New York attorneys. And they're like, Amy, I know you've got the dish. Like we want to know everything about the Murdochs. We've been following it. I just don't see how you're going to get a fair and impartial jury at this point either. You know what I mean? I think that the effect of the jurors now, I think that there's got to be a piece of them that is scared. Yeah, I would be.
Absolutely.
I mean, because they're afraid that they did something wrong. I mean, I talk to my jurors a lot. A lot of times they'll wait like a week and call me and want to talk about things and want to ask me questions, which I think is really so sweet. And I call them sometimes, or they'll wait for me after court, after the trial, and want to talk about the case or hug me. It's really, really sweet. And sometimes I'll get questions and they'll feel like they did something. And I'm like, no, that's what you're supposed to do. That was the rules. You know what I mean?
Fine. Yeah.
That's what you were supposed to consider. That's why the judge gave it to you in the thing, but they don't really know. And so there's this fear that they're going to do something wrong, you know? And I know that they've got to be really, really scared.
Well, it's just completely nuts. Like, it is completely nuts that we're here. I mean, I thought we were going to be somewhere. Like, I didn't think it was going to be like, okay, goodbye, Alec. We'll see you never. Like, I didn't think that was going to happen, but I didn't think all of this was going to happen.
We didn't think we were going to get jazz hands, right? Well, like, this is like, woo, like bring on the show.
But what I fear is that there's, I mean, on your point, Amy, that there's no way that they're going to get a fair and impartial jury. Think about it. Because those 16 jurors, I know that I have to say 16 because that's what we started out with, right? But I would say a good 85% of those other prospective jurors either watched a portion of what was televised. And what we have to remember is a lot was televised that wasn't put in front of the jury. So they have not just the information from the trial itself that was in front of the jury, but they have all of this stuff that either may or may not be admissible or relevant or whatever.
And documentaries
all televised. And documentary, everything that was televised, you know, outside the presence of the juror. And I mean, and I think that Sarah, I think to answer who's ever questioned that was, I do think it's going to impact, you know, potential jurors. I don't know. I think some people really enjoy that. Although I digress. I'll get back to my fact, but there's this hilarious TikTok that I watch all the time because it's some dude. He's a dude and he's like in a shirt and he's like, I just got summoned for jury duty. I'm not going. Why did the state need me to solve a murder? I work at the health and fitness store at, you know, I mean, but it's like, you know, so there are some of these jurors that I think have remained out of it because they aren't interested or they just didn't have the time to put into it. But, you know, I wonder, and I think that to finish the rest of my thought, I think that even though it shouldn't, I think that may go into whatever jurist, like either Judge Newman and or the Supreme Court or whoever else follows. I think that may go into a little bit of their decision making. You know, if they say, look, you know, 10 jurors say that this happened or this didn't happen, and 2 jurors say the opposite, you know, and they were asked questions, and I don't know. I think a lot of that will factor into whether or not a new trial is granted.
I also, like, this has kind of been a swan song for Judge Newman, and it's going to be, it's going to have to be really overwhelming for him to want to reverse it. Does that make sense?
True.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, we also have like the Gerard Price thing that was like, has become the swan song for Judge Manning, right? Like that whole like, yeah, that's like a whole nother, we could do a whole nother hour on.
I don't think that's the swan song he was listening for.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like it is not, it was a song, not the swan song that he wanted, of course. But kind of like, you know, coming to the end of your career and like this big thing, like this whole, like, you know, great.
Let's let this convicted murderer out on the DL and not tell anybody. And then, that sounds like the great legacy I want to leave for the world.
It's very interesting, very interesting. So kind of, Zeke, you know, you gotta like sometimes throw a lasso in here because I'm kind of like, what have we talked about? Like, I know we've talked for an hour and I'm like, what the hell did we talk about? I feel like we've talked about some really great stuff. Zeke, you're the one lawyer who's like up here trying to get your, you know, throw some words in here. What are your thoughts after like us chatting for an hour?
Well, I'm not a lawyer.
You're not a lawyer, but you could play one on TV. You could play one on TV though.
You're the homie. Yeah.
You can hang with us. You can sit with us.
You can sit at our table. You can always sit at our table.
I think that I agree that there is nowhere in the world, honestly, where impartial jurors can be found for a retrial. So what in the heck does that look like? I can't fathom a retrial. Honestly, for the psyche of the Southeast, maybe further. Like I just don't know that we can handle it. And so yeah, like somebody said in the comments, like give me the medicine, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna need some medicine for whatever is to come.
The wheels of justice will stop in South Carolina because we're all going to be glued to the computer.
Right. Well, and I also, like, you know, after the verdict came down, you know, we all talked about, like, you know, there's some hope for the judicial system. You know, South Carolina made a great stride towards fairness, and it's just like I feel like we take a step forward and then we slide back 5 steps, and I just feel like this is another example. And to be honest with you, this is also another example of the good old boy, and in this case maybe the good old girl system playing out. And at what point are we going to say enough to all of this?
There's no good old girl, because if there were some ovaries involved in this trial, it'd have been totally different.
Well, I'm talking about, you know, the clerk.
No,
the clerk. You know, I just think that, you know, regardless of gender, we kind of play into those. You know, if we benefit from the good old boy system, we're gonna use that to our advantage.
Well, it's all great when it's working for you. It's when it's not, is when everybody's crying foul, right?
Exactly. And so I mean, yeah. I worry about what a retrial does for the judicial system in South Carolina.
So
what not a retrial does.
So to your point, Zeke, is it our fault? Like, we're sitting here talking. I mean, I'm not, you know, like, I am Catholic, but I mean, I'm not here like, you know, trying to kill myself here. But, you know, is it our fault? Like, engaging with people on Twitter, trying to have these conversations. Is it the media? Is it, like, what is it? Is it just people are interested in drama? They're interested in when people do bad things and they just can't take their eyes away from it? Is this the wreck on the interstate that we just cannot stop looking at? Like, what is it? How do we fix it?
I think it's a wreck.
Really strong thought. Yeah.
Right. Well, because I think it's a wreck, but it's a wreck with a Lamborghini, a Mercedes, and cars that we don't drive, but we still see these people standing on the side of the road like I would in my, you know, my 4Runner. But, you know, sure, people will look, but people aren't going to, like, stop and stare. And I think that I don't think that we are contributing to the problem. I mean, I think that the story was written, you know, the day that Mallory Beach entered the water. And, you know, I don't think that, you know, that I do think that if it is just not handled, and I think this is my problem, if it's not handled judicially, efficiently, etc., then I do think that it just prolongs the problem, and South Carolina becomes that proverbial joke that we already are, and we just maintain it. But I'm not okay with it.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not okay with it. I think I think we can make that better, you know, by continuing to talk about it.
Well, yeah, to shine the light on it. But I mean, the only way to bring, you know, attention to the darkness is to shine a light on it, right? And when we see things that are wrong, it's the silence that has gotten us here. It's the nobody talking about that law firm getting these huge verdicts. It's no one talking about him stealing money for years and putting it back. It's the no one talking about him getting officers to change accident reports. It's no one talking about him making offers on cases as a prosecutor when he's not really a prosecutor, and that's not his case. This is what got us to this point, and that's the real. I mean, that's what it boils down to. So it's people like us that keep shining a light on the truth and questioning all these things is what's going to stamp it out. And whether or not it's always been my experience that it's got to get worse before it gets better. You know, I tell clients every day, it's like the analogy I always give is like, you know, when you're cleaning out your closet, how you have everything pulled out and it's like a disaster and you're like, oh my God, why did I do this? Because it's just horrible, right? Everything's off the hook. It's a disaster. It looks like a tornado hit, but when it's all done, it's great. But it's that painful process. And that's where growth really happens in life, is when it hurts. You know, my dad always says change only comes to adversity, and adversity means it's got to hurt. And nothing makes more sense that if there's not consequences for actions and we're just going to go back and do the same old, and the standard quo is going to just keep happening. So it's got to hurt. You know what I mean? It's got to be on the record. It's got to be in the public, because sometimes the only way to change it is to shame the system. So the system wants to change because we don't want to feel that way anymore.
I totally agree. I mean, obviously I texted y'all like, y'all want to talk about this? And like, then I'm like trying to blame. I'm not trying to blame it. I just want to say, you know, like there's
no, but we should question that if we're contributing to the problem.
But are we? And I think I totally agree with y'all, is that if we don't talk about this, that is the problem. That's contributing to the problem. You know, I don't think any of us here are, you know, at least we don't have the time to, you know, sit here and engage with this 24/7 and, you know, digging into all. I mean, I think that taking a look at this through the eyes of people who are in the system on the daily basis, looking at it and saying, hey, this doesn't really smell right. Like, not saying, you know, it's not, you know, unethical, not saying it's illegal, but this doesn't feel right to me. And it's something that I see on the regular. Or could be, you know, this affidavit doesn't feel right, or this affidavit is like, whoa, just talking about that, whether we agree, disagree, but just putting this out there that people are paying attention and we're trying to evaluate what we're seeing here, I think is really, really important. And, you know, I think
and Sarah, not only that, but not only that, and it's also, hopefully we can get jurors to say, wait, I can have a voice. You know, I know that it's intimidating and overwhelming, but I was watching these 4 crazy people, you know, on a podcast who said, no, you should stand up. You should like I always tell jurors that they are the most important people in the courtroom, because they are the most important people in the courtroom. And I know that they think that I say that because I'm trying to kiss their knickers, or I don't know what, you know, but it's true. You have all the power, right? I mean, we've brought you 12 or 14 uninvolved, unattached people to come in and to listen to these facts. And that's why, you know, if there is a retrial, I really hope that both sides take a look at the disastrous shit show that was 6 weeks of this, because neither side was really ready, and, you know, and really do justice and do what they should. But also, I hope that any potential jurors, you know, I hope that any potential jurors, not just on this case, but on any PWID, trafficking, domestic violence, whatever, you know, right, unlawful use of a telephone. Like, I hope that they understand that they are the ones with the control and the power. They do have responsibilities to listen, to make their own decisions, but also to speak up, you know, when you're asked, you know, do you have an opinion? Or, you know, it's day 14 of the trial. Are y'all doing okay? You know, or did somebody say something to you that you just want to talk? It may not be anything wrong, but it's okay for you jurors.
This will empower them. This will empower them to speak up and say something when it happens in real time, instead of being scared.
I hope.
I said
I
this
hope.
today. I was talking with somebody about domestic violence, and so often we think domestic violence is like somebody else's problem, doesn't happen here, not in my community, not my neighborhood, all that. And as you know, it's kind of like what came about, and today is obviously 9/11. 22 years ago today, 9/11 happened, and kind of after that, we used to see things in the airport. See something, say something. I think that's important. That's an important lesson for us to take. Not only just obviously today, because of not just today, because of the day it is, but if something doesn't feel right, if something doesn't sound right, if something makes you feel uncomfortable, if something, somebody says, has anybody talked with, you about this case? And everybody goes around, 11 people say, no, and someone has. It takes a lot to be that one person to say, yeah, somebody did, and stop the show, so to speak. But it's so incredibly important to do that in so many different areas, whether you're on the jury or you're a witness to domestic violence or whatever the case may be. But it's hard. It's so hard to stand up and say, am I the only one that this feels weird to?
Nobody wants to be different, right?
Nobody wants, yeah.
My kid's in middle school, and if I haven't learned anything, I bought him a yellow shirt. It's like, it's like neon yellow, because he didn't want to stand out. He didn't want to be any different. And I get that. There's a piece of us that doesn't want to stand out, in the moment, because we don't know what the consequences.
See, those are the jurors that I love, though. I love the independent. The independent.
That's not going to just roll along. Yeah. I think one of the things about this Murdaugh case has made us all realize across the country is that there's a Murdaugh in every community. Whether you're in Nebraska, Iowa, California, New York, wherever, but there's a Murdaugh family or a Murdaugh law firm or a Becky, right? A clerk of court Becky. There's somebody that we know in every community. And I think that I hope that seeing all this gives people the courage to stand up and say no more in their community too, and say something.
It's okay. In fact, it's the only way that things change is when you stand up and say, hey, this isn't right. This isn't okay. We got to stop. We got to stop things. So on that note, we could talk forever. I love chatting with y'all. Y'all are the best. Thanks for joining me. It's been a minute, but I hope we can get together again and chat some more about all sorts of things. Cause I've just got like a laundry list of things that I thought I was going to be able to but I thought I was going to bitch about tonight, but hell, I mean, we just check one kind of Murdaugh. But what an interesting, fascinating case this continues to be. Again, it never left us, right? So thank y'all. Thank you, Amy Z, Amy Lawrence Lovely, Zeke Stevenson. Thank you, everybody who tuned in with us. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. We'll talk to y'all again soon. Y'all take care.
Bye, guys.